Hey everyone, what is up? And welcome back to my Higurashi When They Cry Let's Play. Today we'll be recording episode 32. Yeah, obviously it's been a while. Again, right? I'm not the greatest at this, right? I'm not gonna lie. My scheduling is far from the best. Um, I will say, I think I've finally worked out what has me take unexpected breaks from the game and recording in general. I think it's just, without going too in detail, just when I have something that I'm really stressed about. Recently, it's been financial, and it's been more or less worked out at this point, right? But when I'm stressed about something big like that, I just don't like experiencing new media at all. I just go back and replay the same ones that I'm used to, right? And so I'm like, oh well, that kind of aligned, right? When I started to realize, oh wait, I need to work on my finances, right? All of a sudden, I wasn't recording Higu anymore. So I think that's probably a big part of it. I don't know that there's anything I can do about that besides understand, but it's better than not understanding, I suppose. Anyways, wasn't really trying to get in too deep or something there. Just and honestly, it's really not an excuse. Like I said, either way, right? This recording schedule still sucks, right? Hopefully it'll be a little more ironed out going forward, but I feel like I've said that 20 times by now. So, we'll see. I'll try. But for now, let's just go ahead and get kind of into the episode. We've got two things to say. Going into this one, first of all, I did redo my save without the ability. I think I left the choice prompts up, but now it highlights the correct choice for me. I was told by a few commenters that it wasn't really worth it to go through the bad ends right now, and it could be downright confusing or even contradictory at times. And so I'm like, okay, we're just going to do the main ones. I'm kind of interested to see what the choices are at least. Maybe see if I would have taken a wrong turn somewhere. But we're just going to go through it as intended, at least on the first try. Also, I rewatched the last video, and honestly, dude, my takes were rough last episode. They were kind of bad. I was tunnel visioned too much on the on me thinking there might be something up with time as a concept, right? And kind of just I was kind of missing some obvious things. I think in the second tip, it was pretty clearly about the Minister of Construction, right? Suddenly shifting plans regarding Hinamizawa because they're folding to the pressure, right? Rather than it being some indication of a secret society or telling the viewer oh, there's time shenanigans. No, it's just this guy saying yes, we can change our path. We got to listen to the citizens. Yes, we do, right? I am not under duress right now, I swear, guys. That's basically what it was, and I was over analyzing it so much. It was kind of funny. We're gonna try to not do that this episode, but I guess we'll see. I guess though, that's all I've got to say in the intro. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Before we get officially started, though, there is actually one more thing I want to say. So I don't know if anyone noticed. I'm sure there are some people that noticed. And I left a comment about this in the last episode that I had that random audio bug at the beginning. And upon doing some test recordings, this isn't... I don't know what the cause of that bug is. Because I had it again in my first test recording today. And after, trying to figure out what the issue is, I couldn't find anything about what was causing the random distorted audio, and it fixed itself really quickly, actually. So I don't know what it was, and I tried to ask a friend who also streams, and he says he actually has the same issue, and he doesn't know what it is either. So I guess if anyone knows what randomly causes that distorted audio or what it could be, that you could find it at pretty early in the last episode. If anyone knows what causes that, I would appreciate if you'd let me know so I can try and fix that. If not, I guess bear with me. I'll try to look for more solutions in the future, but I was looking for some today and couldn't really find anything. So hopefully that doesn't become a major issue. Kind of frustrating, I must admit, to have that going on and really not have a clue what to do with it. But let's actually jump into Chapter 2 of Chapter 4 now. Waking up in a cheap hotel in the city was by no means pleasant. I remembered even during the long camping trips we had during grade school, I wanted to get home quickly, counting out the days left on my fingers. Waking up this morning, I was somehow reminded of that. Was it a need to be with my wife when she gave birth? A particular type of homesickness? As a productive member of society, as a public servant bound to fulfill his duties, it was pathetic indeed. Those negative emotions faded as I downed my breakfast, which was surprisingly not half bad. The meeting with the informant that Oishi had provided would be tonight. Until then, I couldn't just be lazing around. I wonder who that informant's going to be. I feel like we're going to know them. Makes me wonder if it's Tomatake. The Onigafuchi Guardians was protesting the dam's construction in various ways. Included in this was a strategy for improving public relations, which could be categorized into two major forms, combative and peaceful. In regards to the former, as an attempt to keep law enforcement in check, they appealed to the public's sympathy by highlighting the oppressive and inhumane tactics of the police and the brutality of the riot squads. The latter, peaceful route, stressed how precious the natural surroundings of Hinamizawa was, seeking people who would oppose the dam on environmental grounds. As a part of that, the village of Hinamizawa had invited celebrated zoologists and botanists, as well as environmental groups, to advertise the nature surrounding the town. According to the news, in recent years there had been a group calling itself Hinamizawa Nature Watching, setting up free sightseeing tours. I would have liked to have taken advantage of the opportunity, but when I called the village administrative offices, they said it was too late to apply for the tour. They were still undecided as to as to when they'd be doing another one. Yeah, given everything going on, I can't really say that's too shocking. Kind of makes me wonder if it's just a front in the first place. Like, is there any real reason to believe that those tours are actually happening? It's not a huge deal, really, but it wouldn't be. It's one of those things where I wouldn't be shocked if it's yet another, kind of front.
次回の募集はありませんか？残念です。
あんた、環境保護団体さんですか？それとも雑誌さんの人？
いえ、個人です。
個人？観光ですかね？
観光みたいなものです。美しい自然を写真に残すのが趣味なんで。雑誌でとても貴重な自然が残っていると読んだので、楽しみにしていたのですが。
I knew there was an article that had something like that written in it, but I hadn't actually read it. Was it this ad-libbed? Was it this ad-libbed lie not going to work? Okay, so I didn't read that wrong. However, contrary to my expectations, the person I was speaking to laughed happily.
ならあんた、村はちょいと慌ただしいけど、
ぜひそうさせていただきます。ありがとうございます。
A little creepy, but alright.
あんた、明日は何ですか？お車？もしそうだったら、先にナンバーを聞いておきますよ。台湾ないんですがね。
Yeah, okay, bro. That was probably related to the checkpoints they'd set up on the way to the village. I didn't give them my license plate number. I'd most likely be hindered in various ways. I thought about using the car I had borrowed from the prefecture, but I was lost on whether it was okay to tell them that plate number. If the Onigafuchi Guardians was behind this incident, there was no guarantee that they wouldn't be able to find out who I was. I had to play it safe, so I elected to refrain from using the car.
いえ、実は車ではないんです。バスか何かがあれば、それで行きたいのですが。
バスならありますよ。もうすぐ廃線になってますですがね。そんでいらっしゃい。沖宮の駅から出ますよ。
ありがとうございます。探してみることにします。
本当、いつ来ます？Hinamizawaさん、初めて？
That it is.
初めての土地じゃ、いろいろとご不安でしょう。教えてくれりゃ、誰か行かせていろいろご案内させますよ。
そんな。 そこまでしていただくのは申し訳ないです。
気にせんでください。これも村の自然さ守るための PR なんですから。
Judging by what I saw at the checkpoint, the villagers were at the very least wary of outsiders. Yeah, that's putting it lightly. That's why in order to move in and out of the village freely, I had to travel with somebody like Oishi, or side with the dam protests. Having an interest in the natural environment surrounding the village tied into the peaceful type of PR that the village was using. I was a bit against having a watchdog attached to me, but that might actually work out in my favor. The entire village was fired up about the dam protests, so I might be lucky enough to hear some especially candid opinions from the residents. Given that, there was no real reason for me to refuse their offer.
本当によろしいのでしょうか。でしたら本当に助かります。
After that, I was shown the bus schedule, directed to which bus I should get on. Somebody would come and meet me at the bus stop in the village. After showing me around a spot I'd taken an interest in, there was no doubt they'd bring me to somewhere like an anti-dam information center. Then, over a cup of tea, they'd try and indoctrinate me into accepting their principles and beliefs. Well, if that was their aim, there'd be a lot of freebies involved. The world is about give and take, after all. I couldn't be going in a suit. I pulled some plain clothes out of my travel case and changed into something more casual. I will say one thing I kind of like about Akasaka so far is he's not super naive, right? Like, he's pretty good at reading ulterior motives, you know? It means when he inevitably gets duped, right, by Hinamizawa, it's going to be all the crazier, right? Or maybe, I don't know, maybe he avoids getting duped somehow, right? And, like, makes, like, I mean, you know, clearly it seems like he lives, right? Given that in the very beginning of this chapter, you know, it was a flash forward from the current point by 7 years. So, you know, unless some weird shenanigans are going on there, he's alive, right? So, must have done something, right? After that, after calming down by watching some local television, I left the hotel and set out for Okonomiya Station. The bus route that I was told would soon be discontinued certainly didn't look that way. There was more than enough trips on the schedule, and the number of passengers was by no means sparse. It was the main link to Okonomiya, the only town in the area. The types of passengers that stood out were older folk who didn't look like they could drive, and housewives who didn't seem like they had a license. The area was submerged at the bottom of the lake. It wouldn't matter if there was a bus route. That's why it was going to be discontinued, in the unnatural scheme of things. I could catch a glimpse of the government's intent in cutting off their means of transportation to bully the village into emptying out sooner. It makes sense. According to the documents, talks between the Ministry of Construction and the locals broke down quite early. The government decided from the start to take an aggressive stance in the matter. It was like the fairy tale with the north wind and the sun trying to get the traveler to remove his cloak. Even their bullying had meaning to it. The reason why the Onigafuchi Guardians resisted so violently was because the government was doing unseemly things like that. I mean, yeah, that is playing dirty. I'm not gonna lie. I was somebody who lived in Tokyo, so for a village or two out in the boonies like this to be submerged didn't seem like a big deal. But I guess for somebody actually living here, it will be a vitally huge problem. Yeah, I mean, everything you've ever known, you know? How it is in those small towns. This route will be discontinued at the end of this financial year. Thank you for your patronage up to this point. We look forward to your continued patronage on our other lines. Okonomiya Transportation. Gazing lazily at the notice of discontinued service posted inside the bus, I counted down the number of stops until the designated one. Along the way, we passed through the checkpoint before without stopping. They knew what time the bus was coming, so they'd opened up the barricade ahead of time. From here on out was enemy territory. My palms had at some point become coated in a thin film of sweat.
浮田水道前へ、浮田水道前へ。お降りの方はいらっしゃいませんか?
I hurriedly pressed the stop request button as the designated stop was announced. For none of the numerous passengers to be getting off here meant that it must be quite a remote place. In actuality, the stop I got off at was so abnormally run down that I could tell it was barely used. I gotta wonder if the person who's going to be our watchdog is going to be someone we recognize or not. As soon as I stepped out, an intense atmosphere completely different than the interior of the bus assailed my body. Right now, Oishi or Hondaya weren't beside me. That's right, at present I was alone in the middle of enemy territory. My adversaries probably thought I was just an ordinary tourist. I was nothing more than a ruse. I don't know that Hinamizawa gets ordinary tourists, but, you know. But if by some mistake my true identity was to be exposed, it brought back the terrifying words I had heard at the prefectural office, that if somebody was attacked in Hinamizawa with a knife, there wouldn't be any evidence left behind. I didn't seem suspicious, did I? My clothing was currently casual. It was exactly the type of clothing that a city slicker that viewed the countryside as a wholesome getaway would wear. A camera and a knapsack. Inside were various things needed for hiking. It was still only June, and maybe it was unusual, but the sun was shining down like it was already the middle of summer. The fact that I didn't bring a hat must seem odd. No, it wasn't something to be that concerned about. Yeah, you're stressing it a little much. It's alright. I was just a normal tourist. Just normal. Is there anything suspicious about me? The fact that you're here, but, you know. Asking that, as I turned around to look at the bus that was departing. Oh. All the passengers by the window were staring down at me, silently. They were staring right at me, as if they had seen right through my proud little outfit, just staring, looking down on me. Countless stares rained down like needles on me from the windows opened to air out the bus. All that rained down were stares. None of them were saying a word. But all the more, their silent stares told me more than a million words could. Hurry up and go back to Tokyo, you outsider.
私は
There's no reason for me to speak. My quiet voice was drowned out by the sound of the engine. The bus, as if to torment me, set out slowly, and after doing more than enough to intimidate me, sped off. Yeah, this is probably a place that, like, no local actually goes, right? And like I said, they don't really get tourists, so, like, why would he be here, right, is my guess. A thin film of sweat began to rise from my entire body. According to the documents, it was a village that seemed wary of outsiders. Its population was small as well. If they saw an unfamiliar face, they'd be quick to identify that face as an outsider. On top of that, nobody else had gotten off at this stop. It was a bus stop that they normally just passed on by. Somebody actually getting off there. There's no doubt that it had drawn some attention. But this wasn't a slip-up. They were the ones who directed me to get off at this stop. There was nothing to worry about. I knew that I was just nervous, since this was my first undercover assignment. My more seasoned colleagues referred to us as the new generation that didn't know how to lose their cool. But that wasn't true at all. That was really loud. Why was that so loud? In order to calm my breathing down, I exhaled the unpleasant air residing in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't help but pray that my apprehensions would disappear like the white clouds of exhaust expelled from the bus. There was a small shed there to serve as shelter if it rained, and it was there I decided to wait. Inside the shed, one wall was plastered with posters advertising the dam opposition efforts. It was like the heartfelt scream of the villagers were recorded on that wall. Inside that shelter, I felt an inexplicable pressure. It wasn't like I had any real relation to the dam project, but it still made me feel hesitant about being inside there. That was just how filled with the force of denial that space was. And inside that uneasy space was a girl. Okay. I was gonna say, I'm not shocked that it's Rika, right? Like I said in the last episode, it seems pretty clear that Rika's gonna be more relevant in this chapter. I wasn't 100% sure that it'd be Rika here, but, you know, it's not shocking to me. It was only a matter of time before she got involved. Inside that shed, covered in words written in broad brushstrokes berating the policies regarding the dam and calling for action, there was a girl sitting there with a drowsy gaze, as if half asleep. The two images clashed so much that I could only stand there dumbfounded for a moment, trapped in such a surreal environment. If I stepped inside, who knew what kind of oafish noises I would accidentally make? I couldn't be disturbing this girl's slumber like that. Having thought this, I gave up on entering the shed. It was just a sleeping kid, so why was I so worked up about it? Finally, I realized. This girl, to us, as a married couple, was the very image of our ideal child. Even after numerous examinations at the hospital, we didn't know for sure what our child's gender was. Whether we could tell if they were a boy or a girl was, in the end, dependent on whether or not we could get an image of their genitalia. There was, of course, no guarantee that it was a girl. But with things the way they were, the possibility was high. Even so, Yuki had been saying that the chances that it was a boy or a girl were even. But in my heart, I had already decided that our coming child was a girl. Since the day I decided that until now, it was so fun to imagine how our child would grow up that I couldn't help myself. Amongst those numerous imagined forms, the one that I thought to be the most ideal had materialized right in front of me. Of course, little of it was due to the circumstances. In my ideal image, her hair would be on the short side. The girl in front of me, though, had long hair. It was almost as if somebody had taken my ideal and made some small adjustments. It certainly wasn't something unpleasant. Even so, I felt like I was sullying her just by looking at her like that. She had an immaculate, no, a divine air about her. That's an interesting way to describe it, given the bits, last chapter about her being Oyashiro-sama, potentially, right? Or like the second coming of Oyashiro-sama, right? Funny choice of words. I don't wonder if that's intentional. That girl with an angelic smile, with a yawn wide enough you could see her molars, woke up all of a sudden. I didn't mean to peep, but locking eyes with a girl who had just woken up like this somehow made me feel like I was playing a prank on her. I wasn't doing anything shady, but I became flustered. The girl spoke. No, cried out?
Me.
Meep? Like that character on the show with the puppets? With the orange hair? I thought it was just one of those greetings kids do. So in order to prove I wasn't a suspicious person, I responded in kind.
Me.
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 What? The girl stared at me dubiously with a doll-like expression. Cute, but cold and hard to read. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. There was, after all, an unfamiliar man right in front of her when she woke up, who responded with meep when she said the same. Suspicious. She definitely thought I was suspicious.
Me.
Dude, use real words.
Me.
Mm.
We were both at a loss for words. No, the only one lost was me. The girl in front of me, as if inquiring about my motives, stared at me intently. In this silence, I felt like I was the one who had to say something first. Damn it. This girl was way better at interrogating somebody than Oishi. Bro did actually last several hours with Oishi and is about to fold in seconds. That's probably why they sent, younger Rika. I mean, Rika is already young, right, in the main game, but, a good 5 years younger here. If she's still, clued into things in Hinamizawa, which wouldn't really be shocking given her family's position, it does make her a pretty good watchdog, right? Potentially.
怪しいものじゃないんだ。
Well, now you sound suspicious.
私は
みぱ
ニパ
みぱ
What I could have only described as a cold expression suddenly blossomed into a smile, one that soon infected me. You might be familiar with the term angelic smile. To me, it was like that phrase was created just to describe the smile she gave me. The girl smiling while saying Nipa probably wanted me to return the favor in kind. Maybe? That's right. This was a kid's form of communication. Maybe. I'm not so sure. Having the other person emulate what you just did was a rudimentary form of mutual understanding.
ニパ
Dude,
みぱ
what am I watching? It was a beautiful afternoon in the early summer. What was I doing?
みぱ
ニパ
Bro, he's getting a little more excited with it. He's getting better. Well, whatever. This was interesting in its own way. If making somebody happy with just a smile was the work of angels, then this girl was definitely one of them. Couldn't help but pray that my own child, who was soon to be born, would grow up to be like this girl. Dude, I feel like we're gonna get to the end of the chapter and he's gonna be like, "No, I don't. That's a demonic hellspawn." That strangely gentle moment was finally brought to the end by the arrival of a car. an older person waved at me from the driver's seat. A dry smile plastered on their face. Oh, is that not the watchdog then?
どうも、こんにちは。
Okay, that makes sense too. But I legit wouldn't have been very shocked if Rika had been like the one bringing him around, I guess.
遅れて申し訳ないことです。昨日お電話くださった観光の方ですかね。
あ、はい。
お待たせして申し訳ねえ。いや、野良でちょいと遅れましてね。したらと、天気もまんた崩れそうだから、ちゃけちゃけご案内しますよ。
天気。
ああ、ここいらは崩れると早いよ。今日も夕立になるかもな。
Those sudden evening showers do kind of hit. In Hinamizawa, at least, you know. Again, chapter 3, right? Like, I don't think there was any... Yeah, I mean, like, the day of Watsunagashi when it suddenly rained, you know. I don't know. You almost gotta wonder if it's like... I'm not gonna read too hard into this, because like I said, I watched the last video, and I felt like I was overanalyzing things, I'm not gonna lie. But it's kind of strange that it only rained the one time, right? Kind of wonder if there's something up with that, I suppose. Also, like, right around the time, like, you know, had the sudden shower in chapter 1, when it was during the scene, Keiichi's, like, breaking down, and Rena, like, he, like, smashes Rena's fingers in the door, and you see her outside for, like, a super long time in the rain, just saying, sorry, I'm sorry, right? I don't really know that I'm going to put stock in the idea that there's too much about, like too much important about those sudden showers, but, you know, it is kind of funny to think about, specifically the chapter 3 one, because it was a departure from normal. But we're going to move on.
そうなったら、あんた写真さ撮るところじゃなくなるでしょ。
Does Brad even have a camera with him?
ほら、乗って乗って。
Me.
Turning around, the girl was standing right behind me with an intrigued expression. Her body language somehow reminded me of a stray cat that followed you around after you played with it a little. It's so charming.
あれ、リカちゃまじゃねえですか。ありがたや、ありがたや。
みぱ
A girl named Rika with an immaculate smile and an old man praising her while rubbing prayer beads in his hands. It was a rather mysterious sight to behold. Yeah, we'd heard about that kind of behavior, but we'd never seen it until now. It is kind of interesting. So, the girl turns her face at me, tilting her head a little in a cutesy manner. After seeing that, the elder introduces me as a tourist who came to sightsee Hinamizawa.
村を観光したい若者なのです。
The girl, Rika-chan, said that with a smile as she clung onto my arm.
まあね、この村の自然がとても貴重だと聞いたんで、ぜひカメラに収めたいと思ったんだよ。
Do you even have a camera?
私はこう見えても、とっても写真撮影が好きでね。
Also, I just gotta say, this really does remind me of, like, Tomatake. And so while I'm not necessarily going to say that Akasaka and Tomatake are one and the same, right? I mean, it's possible. I'm so terrible at recognizing voices that maybe this is obviously Tomatake's voice, right? But, you know, the fact that it's so similar, it makes you wonder if that's more an indication that maybe he's like an undercover cop and that they've seen this exact playbook before.
富竹2号なのです。
Mark II? Huh? What? What? We're gonna keep going for now and see if they got anything to say on this.
富竹？
牧野、僕も一緒に行ってはいけませんですか？
Makino. Is that a name I should know? Is that one of the, Goodness. I feel like that might be one of the names that was mentioned in the executives list in the Onigafuchi Guardians. I'm not 100% on that.
そんな、レカ様が来ても面白いことなんか何もないですよ。
Tomatake Mark II. I'm like, oh no. Mark II is what I'm like, huh? Okay, so one thing it's worth noting, I don't know exactly how long Tomatake said he'd been photographing this place. So maybe he'd been here before? I will say any idea that, Akasaka and Tomatake are one and the same is probably instantly gone with that, right? Because my assumption, I'm trying not to tunnel vision on the fact that in the past, I really thought there was something up with time, right? Which, like I said, I definitely still kind of believe that is very possible, likely even. But I don't want to tunnel vision on that. But I feel like it basically depends. If Tomatake's already been photographing here, right, then it's not weird. She's like, oh, there's just a second person like Tomatake who suddenly has come into town and is a photographer and is checking out our nature reserves. Ain't that crazy? Right? Obviously, though, if there's reason to believe that Tomatake has never been here at this point in the story, things get really weird. And so that is a possibility I'm going to keep in mind. But I'm not going to harp on it for too long, so let's just keep moving.
レカちゃまは境内でマリ遊びでもしててくださいな。
A distinctly displeased expression creeped across Rika-chan's face. Being able to show one's emotions honestly in their faces was a privilege young children had.
もしお差し支えなければ、この子も連れて行ってあげてください。
When I said those helpful words, another smile spread across Rika-chan's face with another nipa as she clung to me again. Ah, not bad at all. I want this girl to call me Papa. No. Father. Dad. Daddy. What am I doing? Ever since I met this girl, I was completely off my game. Just calm down.
勝てなかんと。レカちゃまはダメだ言うても聞かんしな。知ったらんと、己くだし。ささ、レカちゃまも。
The old man descended from the driver's seat and opened up the sliding door of the van, which had Onigafuchi Alliance Town Council stenciled on the side. Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say that he's probably... My guess that this was one of the execs from the Onigafuchi Guardians is probably correct. Just something to keep in mind is that they're because it means they're probably going to be probing us to see what we're doing here, while we're probing them to see if there's anything weird going on. This isn't a normal villager, right? Almost certainly. Hold on. Okay, so let me go back in the log. What is this guy's name again? Makino. Okay, yeah. This is the, I just checked my document where I had a lot of the positions listed. Makino is the name of the auditor of the Onigafuchi Guardians, so yeah, this is someone with the Onigafuchi Guardians. Not shocking. Something to keep in mind, though, this is not a normal citizen, right? Rika-chan brushed me aside, dove into a seat, and began bouncing around right away. It seemed like she was thoroughly enjoying the bouncy springs.
はんれ、レカちゃま。そんじゃお客人が座れねえですよ。だな、こら、レカちゃま。
Girls are nice. I wonder if my child would play around like this too. No. It was written in that guide to raising a child that you shouldn't dote on them. Kids are kids. You don't raise them strictly without spoiling them.
ふかふかでバインバインでニパー。
ニパー。
Rose already realizing he ain't cut out for this. I am definitely going to be a terrible father. It was decided that I would be a doting parent before my child was even born.
さんじゃお客さん。風景の綺麗そうなとこで適当にご案内しますよ。お昼は食べましたかいね。
ええ、ホテルで軽食を。
そうですか。では参りましょうかね。
ひなみざわ観光に出発なのですよ。わーいなのです。
君はリカちゃんでいいのかい？
そうなのですよ。フルでリカと言いますです。もう繰り上がりの足し算とかもできますですよ。
Let her cook.
ああ、そうなの。それはすごいな。
お 指とかは折ってませんですよ。ちゃんと暗算でできますですよ。
Let Rika cook. The way she insisted upon that was just too cute. At some point, the nervousness I had about being alone in enemy territory had evaporated like it was never there at all. You almost gotta wonder if this is intentional, right? Like, bring Rika along, like, totally not intentional. She totally, was there on accident, right? Bring her along and, I guess, lighten up the tourist. I wouldn't be surprised if it's all some big scheme. I had to be at least a little thankful that I met this girl.
じゃあ出発しましょうかいね。Hinamizawa大自然ウォッチング。
The old man stepped on the gas with a great deal of gusto. New song. We got lots of places around the town. I guess nothing too notable, given that they're just just creeping her way into the shot. The old man, who was apparently named Makino. Is he the same Makino that was listed as the auditor of the Onigafuchi Guardians? Showed me around places that were all breathtaking. Even though I wasn't really here for sightseeing, I couldn't help but be impressed. First of all, this was different from the simple scenery of a city. The scenery of a charming village like this, no matter how mundane it seemed to the villagers, had a tranquil appeal to it. At first, I was only releasing the shutter as part of my tourist act, but midway through I found myself taking pictures out of pure interest. Tourist traps have their own unique allure to them. There was nothing like that here. I was especially captivated by the unspoiled nature of the place. If there wasn't that whole uproar over the dam, I would want to bring Yuki with me here some other time. I wanted her to breathe in this fresh air, as well as show her this rejuvenating verdant scenery.
こんなのが面白いのですか？赤坂は変な人なのです。
いや、こういう円筒状の郵便ポストなんて今どことなく漂うノスタルジックな雰囲気は渋いと思わないかな。
ひなみざわは楽しいですか？
ん？まあ楽しいよ。退院したらぜひ家内を連れてもう一度来たいよ。その時には生まれている子供も一緒にね。今は出産を控えて入院しているんだ。予定日がもうすぐでね。
Why would you say that? That's the type of information that you don't give up as an undercover police officer unless you've really let your guard down. Because the natural next question is, if your wife is in the hospital waiting to give birth and is due any day now, why are you here? Right? Like, it seems like a pretty natural follow-up.
君みたいな可愛い女の子だといいんだけど。
お客さんはもうすぐおめでたですかいね。そんないけねえよ。奥さん惚れ出してこんなとこに遊びに来てちゃ。
Yeah. I was momentarily at a loss for words. It was exactly how Makino said. There's no good reason for a man who was waiting for his wife to give birth to be playing around idly in this place. Did I slip up? You did.
まあ。
If it wasn't obvious before, it's pretty obvious now that you're not exactly here for pleasure.
ひなみ沢への旅行は前々からの予定だったんで、妻の家族が付き添ってくれているから大丈夫だし。
そんなに前から予定してたんなら、まさかね、間に合わんとかいね。
Caught in your lies, bro. Oh, brother, you're cooked already. Episode 2 and they're already on to you, dog.
いや、そんだったらこんな窮屈な思いさせんと綺麗な観光バスで回れたのね。
Didn't seem as if Makino was actually digging for anything, but this conversation continued any longer put some unexpected holes in my cover. I halted the conversation by pretending to take another picture, and now it's pretty obvious you're avoiding the subject.
じゃあ最後の一番景色のいいとこさ案内しましょうかね。
It was slightly before evening. The sun was still burning brightly, but a cool breeze had begun to mix itself into the air. It seemed my exploration of Hinamizawa with Rika-chan was just about done.
一番景色のいいところですか？
そんなリカちゃま、境内からの景色さを置いて他にはありませんやね。
Hearing that, Rika-chan smiled even more.
では赤坂を僕のお家へご招待なのです。
リカちゃんのお家って。
神社ですよ。古で神社。高台にありましてね。景色さ見られるんですよ。
古で神社。
The girl who called Furude Shrine her home, Rika. If I remembered correctly, her full name was Rika Furude. And Furude was, that's right, one of the three families. Even if the Sonozaki family said to hold all the actual power, it was still one of the old houses that held some authority. No, more important than that right now was Furude's Shrine. If I remembered correctly, Oishi had told me. Within the grounds of the Furude Shrine, there were the offices of the oh my goodness, of the Onigafuchi Guardians. And since the land around Furude Shrine was private property, the police couldn't set foot there heedlessly. Furude Shrine, or even Oishi couldn't simply set foot into. The main base of operations for the Onigafuchi Guardians, I'd been given the unexpected opportunity to enter there. I couldn't have asked for more.
楽しみです。ぜひお願いします。
じゃあ酒々参りましょうかね。
Oh, I feel like he's gonna go sneaking around.
天気も少し怪しいですからな。
The sky had suddenly become overcast. It wouldn't be odd if it started raining soon. The cicadas, as if trying to finish their daily allotment of chirps before the evening, cried out even more fervently. Oh, they're warning you, dog. You're not gonna listen. He doesn't know. Poor guy. I feel like there's no way this whole sequence is gonna end well for him. And I mean just this episode, let alone the whole chapter, but... The van stopped in the shrine's parking lot. Also parked there were numerous other vans with loudspeakers mounted on top of them to act as makeshift propaganda vehicles. On the side of each vehicle was scrawled, "The dam project must be demolished. Defend our homeland to the last. No Oyashiro-sama's anger," or a slogan of a similar kind. They gave the feeling that even without using the loudspeakers, there was enough to overwhelm any onlookers. Vertical banners were erected in various places. The contents of those banners were similar. They were all objections against the dam, or crude insults towards the government. There were horizontal banners, placards, and so on and so forth. They proclaimed that without a doubt, this was the headquarters of the Onigafuchi Guardians. For Rika-chan, however, this hectic place was also her home.
着きましたのですよ。ただいまなのです。
Rika-chan crawled over my lap and exited the vehicle first. Makino had noticed that I was looking at protest banners.
神社はダム反対運動の事務所も兼ねてましてね。こんな風景もあんたらには反安保闘争みてえで懐かしいでしょ。
Student movements against government policies, movements that bordered on terrorist activity, were at one time commonplace, if only in order to garner global attention. Students holding out in lecture halls, brawling with the riot squads that charged in. It was an age where wasting one's youth like that was widely considered a road to glory. It was slightly before my time.
私は別に活動家ではありませんので。普通に学び、普通に卒業しました。国の政策にあのような暴力や立てこもりで対抗しようというのには、私は同意できません。
I mean, maybe a little bold to say that right in the middle of the headquarters of a, political activist group who is using violent methods. But...
はあ、あんた、それはそれで立派な意見さお持ちだね。
政策に意見したかったら、同じ意見の政治家に投票するか、自ら政治の世界に飛び込み、正当な手続きを持って意見を主張するべきであると思っています。
I feel like this tour is about to suddenly end abruptly.
それが民主政治の原点です。それに、暴力で挑戦するなど、あってはならないと思います。
Bro, you're about to see some of that violence firsthand. Shank, no witnesses, by the way. For a youngin', you have some fine beliefs. I saw that feeling of respect reflected in Makino's gaze. That moment, something tugged at my sleeve.
赤坂が何を言っているのか全然わからないのですよ。
Rika-chan, feeling like she was the only one who didn't understand the conversation, had a look of displeasure on her face. That expression was so charming, I had to keep myself from grinning like an idiot. It's often said that a father wants to spoil his daughter rotten. I think I understood that feeling very well.
ごめんね。リカちゃんには難しい話だったね。日本は平和の国だから。自分の言いたいことは平和的に訴えなきゃいけない。暴力で訴えてはいけない。ということさ。
Right. Hinamizawa definitely heeds that argument. No matter how much I explained, a girl who was just boasting about being able to carry digits over when adding things probably wouldn't understand. Probably wasn't something to talk about in front of Rika-chan anyway. I feel like she's gonna have a
で
visceral
は赤
response.
坂、
Oh, yeah, here it is.
僕たちの村はどうやったらダムに沈まなくなるのですか？
Yeah, I mean, I saw this one coming. Even if I regretted my careless words, it was too late now. There I was, at the main headquarters of an organization, telling them their way of doing things was illegal. Yeah, he's been careless. I think it's Rika, right? Like, my thought that Rika was here very intentionally feels more and more likely. Preaching that violence was not the answer. The complicated feeling had mixed itself in with the respect in Makino's gaze, as then I finally realized it wasn't that simple. There wasn't a soul who would argue that what I said, or that what I was saying wasn't correct. Using violence to get one's way was something that everybody knew you shouldn't be proud of. However, right now, Hinamizawa was in a predicament that couldn't be overcome with peaceful means alone. Yeah, they straight up would have lost, right, if they didn't resort to violence, right? It is, like, objective, right? It said several times the government was very aggressive about this campaign, right? And, like, was just gonna go through with it. And one of the big, turning points was a kidnapping and then, someone getting dismembered. The legality of the Hinamizawa Dam project, through the efforts of the various propaganda campaigns enacted by the Onigafuchi Guardians, was being called into question. If they further strengthened their campaign, they might be able to suspend or change the construction plans. But that was at the most just a possibility. If the government proceeded with the construction as planned, it wouldn't be long before this place was at the bottom of a lake. If it wasn't for the unrestrained resistance of the residents of Hinamizawa, this place might already have been underwater.
僕たちはここでしか生きていけないのです。都会では生きていけないのです。
The words of this remarkably young girl were all too accurate, carrying with them the screams of the hearts and minds of the residents of Hinamizawa. Of course, there was nothing I could say to respond to that. I could only respond to Makino and Rika-chan's heavy words with silence.
すみません。よそ者が気安く言えるような問題ではなかったですね。謝罪します。
Makino, unsure of how to reply for a while, could only laugh pointlessly.
お客人たちのようなよそに住んでる方々には関係ねえことです。ひなみざわさ気に入ってくださったんなら、お客人のお友達みんなにもひなみざわさ素晴らしいところだって宣伝してください。そういうのが何十年何百年と広がっていけば、この村さダム底に沈めるなんてふざけた計画もやがてはついえるんですかね。
He followed that with a smile that said, "Please don't think much of it." Makino letting me not worry that much was really a stroke of good fortune. Becoming infatuated with the idea of making friends with a little girl had made me completely forget my apprehension at being in enemy territory. Being reminded of this right before I was going to step foot into their headquarters might have been a good thing. If we'd had this exchange in the middle of their office, there was a short-tempered youth in there, they might have come at me. Thinking of how extreme they were, in the worst case, my life could have been in danger. It seemed that I looked quite despondent at the moment. Makino, thinking he had said something wrong, became flustered trying to think of a way to improve my mood.
本当に軽率なことを言いました。本当にすみませんでした。
いいえ、そんなにお気にされないでください。
今日案内してもらった村のあちこちはどこもとても美しく素晴らしい場所ばかりでした。もう一度来たいと心底思わされました。そんな美しい村がダムの湖底に沈むことになれば必死の戦いになるのもわかります。
I'd somehow managed to use my despondent look to change the topic in my favor. After a bit, Makino would return to his usual high spirits. It seemed he believed I completely sympathized with his point of view.
そうそう。 そんな話はこれくらいにしましょう。
Well, I mean, I think, he's probably at least lying a little bit, but, I don't know. I don't think it's completely, those views, I don't think his duty and his views have to be completely independent of each other there. He can genuinely believe that this is a beautiful village that doesn't deserve to be at the bottom of a dam, and also understand that I'm a police officer, and the fact that they very likely, and I mean, definitely, we know it was, okay. I don't know that it was ever explicitly said it was them. They might have said as much in Chapter 2 on the phone calls when they first mentioned the kidnapping. But I think I would be extremely, extremely shocked if it was anyone other than Hinamizawa that kidnapped that kid. And so, and that's what he's here for. He can believe that this place is worth saving and also believe that is wrong.
本当にとても景色さえいいところがあるんです。
行きましょうですよ、赤坂。
Rika-chan, seemingly happy to be free from all the boring and gloomy adult talk, bounded up the stone steps. There was no real need to run, but in order to catch up with her, I also darted up the steps. There were several tents belonging to the town council erected on the shrine grounds. Inside the tents were several folding tables and chairs, and a number of the older town council members were livening things up with chit-chat. They weren't saying anything incendiary like, the dam project must be destroyed. It was just some relaxed idle chit-chat between local geezers. The normal sort of calming scenery. At the entrance of a shed that looked like a meeting place, there was a large sign erected with Onigafuchi Guardians headquarters written in bold brush strokes. That was their base of operations. To be honest, it was a bit of a letdown. If you asked what I had been imagining, this is a bit embarrassing, but I'd have thought it was something more dramatic. With barbed wire fences and barricades. My first impression of the place, though, was completely different from that. It looked like a simple, backwater town hall. That's pretty much accurate. It didn't look like anything other than exactly that. The old folks who were chatting had noticed Rika-chan's presence.
リカちゃまじゃないの。もう子供はお家に帰る時間だよ。
ここは僕のお家なのですよ。
The old folks guffawed, since she wasn't wrong. In that exchange, I could tell this Rika Furude girl was loved by everybody. That is accurate.
牧野さん、その人？
That's Kichiro. Okay, so that's the mayor. Correct. Let me double check my list. Yeah. That is the president of the Onigafuchi Guardians and the mayor of the town.
電話をくれた観光の人は？
そうですよ。こちら村長さんに。HinamizawaのHideyoshi村長さん。
All I did go was 2 more lines and they were going to tell me he was the mayor. I didn't have to check. But he smiled brightly, but there was no mistaking he would be scary if he got angry. By the looks of things, this old man was the president of the Onigafuchi Guardians, none other than Kichiro Kimiyoshi himself.
ようこそHinamizawaへ。
This is our first time actually getting to see him. Also, they're playing a really mysterious song right now. I definitely think there's about to be some discussion,
いかがでしたか？静かでゆっくりしたところでしょう。
ええ、今日一日美しい場所をいくつも堪能させていただきました。貴重な機会をお与えくださったことを感謝します。
へえ、今時の若い方なのにまた真摯な方だね。
喜一郎、赤坂に見晴らしのいいところを案内したいのですよ。
Thinking that the formalities between myself and the mayor had gone on for too long, Rika-chan butted into the conversation. For her to call the mayor by his first name, I felt it was a little strange, but none of the villagers seemed to mind. A girl of the Furude household, one of the 3 families. She was probably different than the average villager. Definitely.
赤坂、こっちなのですよ。
I keep feeling like it's going to be like some super creepy location. Rika-chan tugged at my sleeve. Not resisting, I allowed myself to be pulled over. And waiting for me was a magnificent view. No, maybe not.
これはすごい。
I've seen it a few times, but it is really nice art. Where's it gonna pan down? It was an observation deck that looked down on the village. They, knowing that this was the best view in the entire village, kept quiet as I stood there awestruck. I was holding a camera, but had completely forgotten to even glance through the viewfinder. This view, no matter what kind of film it was printed on, it wouldn't be able to show everything. If there was a way to explain it, it would only be what I would be able to put into words. It was just such a breathtakingly spectacular view, I struggled to find a comparison. For a while, I was left awestruck. I could only stand there and wonder. A cool breeze helped abate the heat rushing through my body. That comfortable sensation also left me speechless. Rika-chan, who had been holding onto my sleeve the entire time, spoke.
僕の一番のお気に入りの場所なのですよ。
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, we can see why. It is a beautiful view. As she said that, she showed me another adorable smile. That smile seemed very fleeting. If you ask me why, that was because the view from her favorite spot, would eventually be submerged under the deep green waters of the dam reservoir.
こんな村が湖底に沈むことになってるなんて信じられないよ。
I will say he's starting to seem legitimately sympathetic. I said it quietly so that only Rika-chan could hear it. I regretted it as soon as I did. Those words were all too cruel. However, Rika-chan didn't let them cast a cloud on her expression. In fact, she replied with a smile.
沈みませんよ。ダム計画なんて必ずなくなっちゃいますのです。
I mean, she's right. It was just like a little girl to say something like that. There was no basis for her saying so. It was just her wish.
赤坂はこの村が沈んでしまうと思っていますか？
I mean, if nothing is done, yes.
沈んでほしくなんかないよ。
I knew how important the dam was. I knew that it was necessary. I just didn't want to recognize the sacrifices that would be made. I agreed with the project in general, but couldn't agree with some of the details. But if it meant that this girl's beloved scenery wouldn't be taken away from her, I might be able to object to the dam. I might be able to ignore the interests of the nation, the development of Japan, all for the sake of one girl's smile. I'm not really much of a humanist, but sentimental of me.
沈みませんよ。ダムの計画はもうすぐなくなりますですから。
Her words weren't just hopes and dreams, but were seasoned with a hint of resolve, as if she was talking about an unchangeably predetermined outcome. As surely as the sun rising in the east.
もうすぐ
Wanting to ask her why she believed that, I turned around.
はい、なくなりますのですよ。
どうしてそう言い切れるんだい？
Why do I feel like it's about to get really bad?
それはなのです。
Okay, maybe not. Well, that was like a... She seemed to want to answer, but as though unable to find the right words, she swallowed back what she was about to say.
赤坂が何をしてもしなくても。
I gotta say, one thing I'm thinking about right now is... Oh, man. I'm back to overanalyzing already. I said I was gonna try to not do this, but I don't know. It's more fun to overanalyze things a bit. As long as I actually get the basic meaning of things, I don't care if I overanalyze. Let's let her
ダ
keep
ム計
speaking.
画は今年で終わりになってしまうのです。もう決まっていることなのですよ。
It's already been decided. I mean, she's clearly in the know on something. Originally, I was going to say something like, I don't know. Given that she knows Tomatake of Tomatake, called him Tomatake Mark II, and is saying it's already decided, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe she somehow legitimately knows things that will happen in the future. And I'm like, that a little out of pocket? Like, maybe, right? It's something to keep in mind, right? I think there's a very real chance she just knows the inner workings of, like, whatever, well, I say whatever plan they have. I know what their plan is, right? Or at least some of it regarding the dismemberment, right? I mean, it's made out to be like it was a big impromptu thing, but there's good reason to believe that it wasn't, given the fact that the director is seemingly still alive, right? Good old Kantoku, right? Being used in Chapter 1. So I think there's a good chance that it was premeditated, and she could just know that. So I'm not going to freak out over that, but there's two different little details that I want to keep note of and see if either of them, it's like, if we find out that Tomatake wasn't here, right, until later, right, or if we find out that it was literally just an impromptu spur-of-the-moment thing, the damn dismemberment, right, we got reason to question But we're going to move on for now. I was a lie. If something like that had already been decided, then the Onigafuchi Guardians would have no reason to continue existing. From my point of view, it was like they were doing nothing more than throwing themselves into an endless battle. If they knew the dam project was cancelled, it would feel much more relaxed around here. This village, though, could hardly be called relaxed. For evidence of that, I just had to remember how charged the atmosphere was at the checkpoint, or at the bus stop. The villagers, with their misplaced resolve, were still fighting. And this girl, even knowing the villagers' grim resolve, had already declared their victory. The villagers throwing themselves into this endless war, and this optimistic girl who said they had already won. The contrast was somehow strange.
どうしてそう思うんだい？何か確信があるなら私に教えてくれないかい？
No, she cannot. Rika-chan stayed silent for a while, seemingly choosing what to say.
だって
That's a great explanation. Thank you, Rika. You've done it. Yeah, I mean, realistically, it's an explanation you'd expect from a child. I wouldn't be shocked if that's her, saying, we're ending this conversation.
だって
She looked like she was lost on whether she should continue or not. As if she was troubled on whether it was okay for her to say it. Kind of expression. Maybe not. Okay, I thought that might be like an intentional, we're just going to say because, and it's going to be clear that it's just a childlike belief, right, and then we're done.
決まっていることなのです。他に言いようがないのですよ。
決まっているって言ったって
It really is just like a little girl to say something like that. I couldn't believe it was actually true. She was the only one saying such things with such confidence. My real mission, that I had forgotten about during this fun-filled day, resurfaced at the back of my mind. The kidnapping of the minister's grandson. Had the Onigafuchi Guardians kidnapped the minister's grandson and already succeeded in negotiating the cancellation of the dam project? Did Kimiyoshi actually already know that and was just playing dumb? Was that what this girl was really telling me? It is possible.
Akasaka,
The girl called out my name suddenly.
なんだい？
東京へ帰れ。
Huh? I wasn't only surprised at that sudden command. Ever since I came to this village, I had never once mentioned I was from Tokyo. Well, based on my accent, she might have been able to guess where I was from. What was I getting so worked up over? It was probably the sudden and complete change in her demeanor.
あなたはさっさと東京に帰った方がいい。でないとひどく後悔することになる。
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was expecting something like this sooner or later. The girl had been holding my sleeve the entire time. She'd been tugging at my sleeve since hurriedly dragging me over to show me this wonderful view. This was the adorable Rika-chan who I'd spent the entire day with. There was no way she could have been replaced with a doppelganger when I wasn't looking. She had been holding onto my sleeve this entire time. But somehow this girl was someone other than Rika-chan. She looked like Rika-chan, but she wasn't. She was some girl I had never met before. That girl had told me in an indifferent voice I would eventually regret coming to this village from the bottom of my heart.
それがあまりにもみすぼらしくて、今のうちから警告してあげているのです。
どうして私が後悔することになると。
いちいちうるさいな。
I couldn't believe that I was hearing such cold words come from Rika-chan's mouth. Yeah, I mean, true. It is definitely different. But we've seen this exact kind of, switch, just like that, from several characters now, so... I just couldn't believe it. Somebody impersonating her, using ventriloquism or something? Thinking that, I wanted to take a look around, but... The girl's gaze had me pinned down, making me unable to move.
あなたの親は、あなたが赤信号の横断歩道の真ん中にいるとき、どうして危ないのかを全部説明し終えるまで、あなたの手を引っ張らないの？引っ張るでしょ？まず歩道まで連れ戻してから、なぜ危険なのかを解くでしょ？
Yeah, true.
つまりはそういうこと。
Jeez. Hearing this out of the mouth of Rika, who is 5 years younger than the one I know, is insane. The girl I had spent time with, Rika Furude, would not speak like that. That is true, right? And I mean, the real question is that literal? Is that literally, this is not Rika? Or is that once again, or not once again, is this kind of this is who she really is, kind of thing. And that's kind of the question that, once again, I'm like, I don't know the answer to. But let's move on. She would speak with a cuteness befitting her age, with brief, childish remarks, expressing her emotions honestly. Definitely wouldn't speak with such pointed words.
警告はした。勘違いしないでほしいのは、私があなたを嫌いだからこういうことを言ってるわけじゃないってこと。死んでもいい人に危険なんかを教える必要はないのだし。
君は誰だ？リカちゃんじゃない。
As soon as I accused her of not being Rika-chan, she let out a strange, quiet giggle. It was a laugh not befitting a child of her age. It was like she was possessed by something. Her change was just that total and complete. Was Rika-chan being attacked by some terrifying phenomenon? That occult idea came to mind without any sort of hesitation. Rika-chan is acting strange. Somebody, help! Thinking that I'd yell that, I turned to where the mayor was. I immediately realized he was looking at us with a smile. That's right. To him it looked like nothing more than me and Rika-chan fooling around. He didn't notice that there was something terrifying happening to her. No, this is just normal.
Akasaka no kowagari.
The girl had obviously grasped that I was afraid. Noticing that and calling me a coward, she laughed again. A cackling girl, approaching me in a strange manner while still laughing, lost her balance and fell flat on her face. Rika-chan fell down. It was just a while before I would have extended a hand to help her up without hesitation. But now, extending a hand to this ominous girl who looked like Rika-chan but wasn't, required a bit more courage than I had at the moment. Well, now you just look like a jerk.
Me.
The girl cried out thus. She then squirmed upright and dusted herself off. Afterwards, she looked around restlessly as a blank expression crept across her face. You've got to be kidding me. Is she making fun of me? That way of acting. It was as though, after being possessed by something, she had lost her memories of what happened.
冗談だろ、リカちゃん。
Me.
I don't know if Rika-chan had heard me or not. She just cried out like that, as if questioning herself.
お客人、リカちゃまも。
Well, I will say, that exchange certainly makes it look more like a possession than anything we'd really seen up to now. It's not that I didn't consider the possibility, but I don't know. The thing is, Rika, we know, at least 5 years in the future, is like a master of deceit, right? And so, maybe a master of deceit is like a strong way to put it, but like she's very good at hiding things and whatnot, right? And so I'm like, is it just an act? Like, I don't know, it's Rika. It legit would not shock me if 5 years ago she was capable of playing things off like that, right? But I don't know. It certainly looks more like a kind of possession theory could possibly be in play than I had thought before. Let's keep moving though.
お茶が入りましたよ。塩大福もあるからに、ぜひ食ってきんさいな。
An old lady wearing a smock was waving energetically from the entrance of the office. Hearing that there were snacks, Rika-chan's expression changed.
はーいなのです。
A carefree smile. That was a familiar smile, the one that belonged to the embodiment of my ideal daughter. Any hint of the creepy girl that was just there, spouting sinister words, had vanished.
ほら、リカちゃま。手を洗ってきんさいね。
Dang, phone's going off.
バッチリおててにゃ食わせるまんじゅうはありんせんね。ちゃんと洗いますですよ。
Rika-chan responded with vigor, running off to the washing station that was along the side of the office. She stopped halfway, turning around to call me.
早く来ないから、僕は赤坂の分までおまんじゅうが食べられてホクホクなのです。
Yeah, hard to act normal now.
おててを洗わない人はおまんじゅうが食べられないのですよ。
That's good wisdom. I don't know what manju is, but like, that's good wisdom. No matter how you looked at it, that was Rika-chan. Those words and the way she said them, no matter how you heard them, they were definitely Rika-chan's.
ほんでお客人、大人なんだからお手本を示してやってくださいな。
Yeah, you tell him. You tell him. The old lady urged me to wash my hands. Without any resistance, I lined up beside Rika-chan at the wash station. Splish splash. I stared at Rika-chan, intent on washing her hands properly, like she had probably learned at school. Wow, I made up several words there.
みー、間違っていますか？
間違いって。
僕のお手手の洗い方です。金シールを4個しかもらったことないです。僕はお手手を洗うのがきっと下手なのですよ。
間違ってなんかないよ。それだけしっかり洗えてれば十分だよ。
それだけではダメなのですよ。赤坂、ちゃんとたわしを使って爪の間の赤も落とさないと金シールはもらえないのです。
Man, they're real thorough around here, huh?
うん。
Bro, he's getting taught how to wash his hands.
リカちゃんは真面目で偉いな。
ニパー、赤坂に褒められましたのです。
No matter how you looked at it, it was Rika-chan. There was no trace of that girl from before. Exactly what was that sinister girl?
リカちゃん、さっきのあれはどういう意味だい？さっきリカちゃんは私に東京へ帰れってそう言っただろ。
言いましたのですか？
I was gonna say, there's either no memory of that or she's bluffing, but this Rika definitely so far has felt like she is not as good at bluffing. I was at a loss for words. She didn't remember what the girl just now had said. Like I would ever believe something as occult as that could happen. I would ever believe that Rika-chan could be possessed by that strange girl and say those creepy things.
リカちゃんが確かにそう言ったよ。
Her expression told me that. Despite my saying so, she had no idea. She wasn't playing dumb. She actually didn't know. Exactly what was that just now? Just as Rika-chan had, I let a look of confusion creep across my face. The two of us, both looking like we had no idea what was going on, must have certainly been a humorous sight to behold. You had to play it off, act like you must have been confused. While partaking of tea and snacks, I was shown a propaganda film shot by the Guardians that highlighted their resistance efforts. Older folks talked passionately on how long and grueling the fight against the dam was, but they fell on deaf ears. I was transfixed by Rika-chan, who had heard these stories countless times before and was nodding off. Eventually, Rika-chan noticed I was staring at her and smiled as she rubbed her eyes. That smile was Rika-chan's, after all. There was no hint of that sinister shadow. After that, my unreasonable fear of Rika-chan lessened with the passing of time, but I could by no means forget what had happened. It eventually grew dark. The mayor said that they had prepared dinner, but I said I would come again tomorrow and took my leave. I had to return to the hotel and file my regular report with the section chief. Bro,
そうですか。
you're probably wiretapped.
では、また明日もぜひいらっしゃい。お電話さくれれば、すぐに迎えを出しますんでね。
ご好意感謝します。ぜひ明日も遊びに来ようと思います。
ねえ、さしてあげてくださいな。あんた、リカちゃまに大層気に入られたみたいだしね。
赤坂は明日も来ますですか？明日は5次元で終わりですから、3時くらいに来てくれると嬉しいのですよ。
Please come again. A pierced smile urged me to do so. There wasn't a trace of that evil aura, the one that had explicitly told you not to come back. Depending on what happened next, all that might end up is nothing other than my hallucination. Thinking about it logically, if the daughter of the Furude household, one of the three families, had taken a liking to me, and this was a strong foothold for my investigation from here on out. It was like a free ticket for a reason to visit Hinamizawa. If only I could treat that little incident as a figment of my imagination, and having this girl, who was the embodiment of my ideal daughter, grow so attached to me, wasn't bad either. I successfully dove into the belly of the Onigafuchi Guardians, and had the mayor as well as other important members of the alliance welcome me with open arms. This was a great turn of events. However, I still felt uneasy. Getting back to the hotel, I forced down an almost painfully cold beer until I could clear my mind. The shock from that incomprehensibly strange incident continued to torment me. Is that it? Might be it. We'll see if it's a transition or if it's gonna actually, give me like tips and whatnot. Okay. Seems like the end. This is a short episode, but honestly, we'll probably end it here. Just because kind of getting back into the swing of things again, right? It's usually easier to do a short episode anyways. And also, admittedly, I'm going to be taking a trip again in like a week, and I want to get Chapter 4 done before that. But since I'm going to be gone for like another 2 weeks, I figure it's not a bad idea to have more episodes, space things out a little bit. But that was a fascinating chapter, right? Let's go ahead and look at the tips. I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind and record more, but I'm thinking about just wrapping it up here. Oh my god, it's young Mion. I guess it could be Shio, but looks like Mion. Alright. Is this the report? Here's my guess. It's called Going Smoothly, at least. The sound of the car grew closer, followed by the sound of it braking as the engine cut out. At that moment, his up until now lackadaisical footsteps grew decisive as the man in the room dashed up to the wall beside the window and carefully peered outside. It was his comrade's car. Even so, he still didn't relax his guard. Eventually, the sound of footsteps approached the door. Thump, 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 thump. It was the passcode.
帰ってきたね。開けちょくれな。ああ、お疲れ。今開ける。
Maybe these are the kidnappers, actually. After the locks were undone and the door opened, a man appeared, his arms laden with swollen plastic grocery bags. The bags in his hand had Sevens Mart written on them, with bread and milk cartons able to be glimpsed within. The contents of those bags were then spread out over a sheet on the floor.
カップラーメン買ってきちゃう。お湯沸かせな。
Yeah.
小僧はどうしてる？
Looks like it's the kidnappers.
ん？ずっと寝てる。手がかからなくて助かるよ。うんこ垂れるときは騒ぐけどな。漏らさせんな。弁収は万一のとき、やばいって。わかってるよ。猿グツワは定期的にチェックんな。外れてもまずいん。きつくも締め付けちゃあん。窒息させたら意味がなん。わかってるって。あれ？携帯コンロのガス管頼まなかった？もうガスねえよ。聞いてねえ。だは。
Unlucky.
マジかよ。ついてくれよ。くそ、くそ。
He rattled the portable stove as he struggled to get it to light. Seeing that, the man who went to buy supplies let out a deep sigh, and with a backwards glance at that sight, began to walk to the corner of the room. The kidnapped boy was sprawled out on a sheet that was spread out on the floor.
小僧、元気かいね。
Of course, the man didn't assume the kid was able to hear that question. That was because the boy's ears were plugged, with his eyes and ears thoroughly covered by packing tape. Also, his mouth was gagged with a thin, twisted-up towel. Because of that, the boy was unable to close his mouth properly, his cheeks sticky with his own saliva. Of course, that wasn't the only reason. Both his arms were tied tightly behind his back with a leather belt.
今んところ、順調らし。命の心配はない。お前のじいさんがしぶり寄ったん。耳たぶの一つも切り落とさなきゃならんかったんけ。やらんくて済んで助かりよんよ。
Yeah, saying wanted to play tough? I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's not super past tense, but it kind of seems past tense, like he's already not playing tough.
本家はこうと決めたら、鬼やんね。どんな残酷なこと命令するかも想像つかん。その本家が、小僧に傷一つつけるな言うてんから、とにかく、順調なんだろんな。大臣はダム計画を撤回で水面下工作。
Yeah.
Hinamizawaダム計画は無期凍結へ。小僧の解放はいつ頃になるんだろうな。早く一服したいもんだぜ。本家が決着のタイミング、測ってるらしい。いつになるかはあらんが、近いうちやんな。
Yeah. Well, hopefully.
よかったな、小僧。もうじき解放されるぞ。
The The men didn't know if their voices were heard by the boy. For him, there was nothing he could do but continue to sleep to escape his harsh reality.
それよん、ガスをどうするんね。ラーメン食えんよ。ガス切れたなら言うてえな、もう。
Yeah, that wasn't L. Can't lie. Alright, let's see why someone likes rainy days. The weather forecast had predicted that it wouldn't rain at all this entire week. It's not that I hate sunny days or anything. When every day is the same, unchanging, sunny weather, however, anybody would long for a rain cloud or two. If it's simply clear skies for a week, a month, a year, anybody would long for a rain cloud or two. The weather specialist said that they had carefully scrutinized a large quantity of past data, so it wouldn't be so likely for the forecast to be wrong. I knew as much, but even then, there was occasionally a day where I was hoping that it would be wrong, as I stared into the clear blue sky. By being mischievous and hoping so, I waited and waited, feeling almost suffocated by the boring blue sky undisturbed by a single cloud. If you could die from that suffocating feeling, then the population of Earth probably wouldn't have increased to this point. In other words, the only person who was being suffocated by this was me. And so, I welcome to the summer evenings where not even the weather forecast could predict a sudden shower. If I were to explain it like this, would you understand a bit more about how I feel? Interesting. This is interesting. I'm not sure what to make of this. This definitely feels like a lot more than it's about a lot more than weather. Let's say that tonight's dinner was going to be curry rice, but when you're called down to the dinner table, what was waiting for you was instead an eggplant and bell pepper stir fry. This is just on your mother's whim, by the way. I'd be delighted by such whimsy. I don't really like eggplants or bell peppers, but still, I'd be delighted. The fact that the pre-established routine of curry rice had been broken would be amusing. If tonight was repeated 100 times, and 100 times you had to eat curry rice, if for just this one night, that was changed to an eggplant and bell pepper stir fry, there's no way you couldn't enjoy that chance happening. I hate pre-established routines. I really hate when things are all decided beforehand. I have no love for boredom. I always get my hopes up that something today will be different from yesterday, no matter how trivial. It's been decided that this entire week, starting today, was going to be clear skies. The weather forecast decided upon it, so the god of weather must also feel obliged to do so. But who's to say that a rain cloud might not just show up one day on a whim? It's something that nobody can say for sure, but because that thought remains in this world, creatures such as myself can continue living without being suffocated. Tomorrow will probably be a hot and clear day. However, I'm the only one that knows that predetermined fate, even with but a slim 1% chance, sometimes changes. Hoping for that 1%, I hung up upside-down weather charms on my sunlit eavesdrops? In the end, I spent my days waiting for those unexpected things in life to happen. I pondered why I was hoping for it, why I was hoping for a rain cloud. Why was I hoping for a rain cloud? The answer was simple. I've had my fill of clear skies. And why was I hoping for a rain cloud? The answer was simple. The fact that it was going to be sunny tomorrow was boring. So why was I hoping for a rain cloud? In the end, it doesn't really matter whether it rains or shines tomorrow. Basically, it was just that the rain would water my heart, which was withered from boredom. That's why rather than a TV drama where the plot's already been decided, I prefer to look up at the sky. What? So okay, don't get me wrong. I mean, it seems like I kind of get the point. Even if it's not explicitly about weather, it's that idea that the unchanging is boring, and that whoever that narrator is, finds some kind of amusement or even hope in the fact that things might change, right? Even if that chance is tiny, incredibly slim, right? I don't know. The question is who is the narrator? Why are they telling this story? I can't help but feel like this is gonna play into the story at large, right? Also, this reminds me a lot of last chapter's tip about what was it? Like the gears, like how people are in a lot of ways like gears in a clock, right? How the movement, like something affecting one person can have like that ripple effect, but only on that local community, right? Or maybe not local community, because like they said, it wasn't like literal place, right? More about right? You know, that idea of a group of people being connected, right? And being impacted by the decisions of others, right? That's kind of what this one was about. So these felt very similar in the sense that they're saying things that I feel are going to be relevant to the plot as a whole, and I think they might very well have the same narrator. Who that narrator is, I don't know. I really don't know. It wouldn't shock me if it's... I don't want to say whatever being possessed Rika, because that implies that something did possess Rika, which, I mean, we'll talk about a little bit, but, like, I don't know if I'm completely sold on it, but this episode certainly made it feel like a more intriguing possibility. Harder for a Rika this young to lie and hide her emotions so well. But I guess we'll talk again about this one, though. Like I said, it feels like it's about, like, I don't know. In my head, I'm like, what if this is like a time loop? Right? Yeah, I mean, that's probably overanalyzing. Right? I'm almost certainly overanalyzing there, but like, almost like, I'm seeing it as almost like that slim chance, like, make like a time loop that whoever that narrator is does not enjoy. Right? Like, they are aware of what is happening. And they don't enjoy that things kind of keep looping. Right? And their slim hope is that maybe things will change, right? Even if that's not what that means, there's like the concept of like what I said, right? Like the finding hope in the idea that what is like determined, right, can be changed, right? I mean, it could even be about the dam construction in a way, right? Like, you know, and for a lot of the Hinamizawans, it seems like maybe inevitable, right, that this is going to happen, and that slim chance that it doesn't is their hope, right? I don't think that's what it's about, to be honest, but in theory it could be, right? So that was an interesting one. These two and any other that feel like they have the same narrator, I'm absolutely going to have to analyze more, right, as we get further into this route. I'm very intrigued by these in particular. So let's go on to the last tip: barley tea and black tea and a millstone. With Irie and presumably young
だいぶ血圧も良くなってきましたよ。そのお年でこれだけの回復力があるのは、お嬢さんなら100でも200でも元気にお過ごしになれますね。
The young doctor in his medical coat said that as he undid the blood pressure cuff from the arm of the old woman tucked away in her futon.
入江の先生はほんにお上手で、わしんたいな死に損ないは早うしなんと若者の邪魔になっていけんね。
Also, our first time seeing Oryu. It's fascinating. I actually don't remember what's the button to switch art styles? I didn't do that earlier for, Oh, no, they're just not there. Okay. I guess that makes sense. It's not too shocking. Just a little thing added in later. The old lady, Oryu, laughed faintly with a broad smile on her face. Then, turning towards the sliding door, she called out in a strong voice.
しみこさん、かたえこさんおらんね。入江先生に麦茶でも入れてやりゃな。
The sound of rushed footsteps from the hallway drew closer, until finally the door slid smoothly open. What revealed was a young girl. It looked like the old lady's granddaughter.
しみこさんは今日はもう上がっちゃったよ。何かよ。
いや、入江の先生に麦茶を入れたってんな。
Her forehead is huge. Okay, so they didn't change it except in the console version, it looks like. Interesting. I think more and more, as I get further into the game, I prefer the console art the most.
うん、了解。抹茶も飲む？紅茶の方がいい？ 砂糖もミルクもたっぷり？
わしが加減するから入れんでええんね。砂糖壺とミルクも一緒に持ってきてんな。
はいはい。
Same general demeanor, you can tell it's Mion. The girl named Mion, after giving a rather uninterested response to her taskmaster of a grandmother, returned to the hallway.
先生の麦茶は来客用のガラスジャーに入れるんよ。ちゃんとお座布団もつけてな。水滴もちゃんと拭き取っとくんね。
That one's oddly specific.
わーってるってうっさいな。
Man, telling that to Oryu takes some guts. A tired voice wafted a reply from down the hallway. The apathetic tone of voice was far from unusual. The old lady let a wry smile slip across her face as she chided the girl.
しょうがないやっちゃな。叱られるうちが離んねえ、なんたく。
おりょうさん、まあ、そこまでは言わなくても、ミオンちゃんも若いなりに頑張ってますから。
あれの母親もな、しょうがないやっちゃったんね。よう似とる。
で、その母親の母親もまたそっくりなんじゃないですか？
The old lady burst out laughing. Her expression showed she hadn't taken the comment the wrong
エ
way.
リエ先生、申し訳ない。症状開けてもらえんけんね。風が涼しそうだわ。
The cool chirping of the Higurashi had at some point started leaking through the gap in the doorway. Irie stood up and opened the door a bit. A bit? A refreshing breeze pushed out the stale air that had built up in the room.
日中はだいぶ暑くなったように思うんですが、まだ朝夕は涼しいですね。夕べは少し肌寒いくらいでした。
そんな朝夕もまた、Hinamizawaのいいところな。
Irie replied with a smile as he returned to sit on the cushion beside the old lady. And then the two of them, for a little while, soaked in the voices of the Higurashi.
わしゃ100まで生きにせ。もうしばらくは死ねんよ。
That is true.
ダムの件。
Whoops.
国が一度決めたことを撤回するのは、なかなか難しいでしょうね。
国のやることはな、いつの世も一周す回すみたいなもんね。そんでもだいぶ重いやっちゃ。
石臼で
知らんねか、石臼。
Irie quickly affirmed that of course he knew what the old lady was talking about, for he knew full well that Oryu didn't like having her stories interrupted.
国の石臼はな、なんでもゴリゴリ引いちまう。大したもんよ。でもな、簡単には回らない。重い石臼なんねんな。
Right?
たくさんの人間が、せーのってやって、ようやくじりじりと動き出す。
Yeah.
そんな石臼なんよ。
I mean, true. I mean, you know, I don't know that specifically about Japan, but that does kind of sound pretty accurate to cover it. Irie pursed his lips, listening quietly to what she was saying. Eventually, Mion returned with some tea laid out on a tray. Seeing that Oryu was talking and in a good mood, she quietly knelt down and laid out the sets for the barley and black tea, careful not to interrupt.
だから、一度回り始めたら、簡単には止められんね。
I mean, that's kind of where I figured this was going.
回し始める一番初めが一番重い。それが嫌だから、みんな手を休めんと、ゴリゴリ回し続けるんね。
It takes forever to get moving, but once it's moving, it's hard to stop.
摩擦係数の話でしょ。確かにバッチャの話、理屈はあるね。
ちゅうことはだ。何かの間違いで、突然石臼が止まっちまったら、また回すにゃどえらい力がかかる。ちゅうこったな。
So, basically, it sounds like their kind of general plan. Because, I mean, this is Oryu. She's like the leader of the whole thing. So, if this is how she believes, it's probably important. And just the general plan, it kind of sounds like get them to stop, even if just for a bit. and they probably aren't going to pick it back up. Which, I mean, is pretty accurate.
確かに一度中断した計画をもう一度動かすのに必要なエネルギーはかなりのものでしょうね。
So if they have to resort to unruly methods to temporarily get this project stopped, they're going to be willing to.
簡単には止められんイシュースだけどな。
Once they get it stopped, it's not easy to
一
move.
度止めれば二度とは回らん。そういうイシュースよ。
石臼を止めるいい手があればいいんですがね。
When Irie responded with that, Mion and the old lady suddenly sunk into silence. Irie, instinctively thinking he had said something rude, searched in a small panic for the words to correct himself. But that silence wasn't the result of rude words. For what crept across Mion and the old lady's face were contemptuous smiles. Oh yeah, they've got a plan. They've got a plan. The atmosphere surrounding Irie suddenly froze, leaving him flabbergasted. Thinking that the scornful smiles creeping across both of their faces was the result of some mistake of his, he could only grow afraid. It hadn't been that long at all since he was enveloped by silence. However, unable to stand it, Irie could only let out a weak laugh. Irie's laugh eventually spread to Mion and the old lady. Not knowing exactly what they were laughing at, their laughter left a lingering chill. The only ones not laughing were the Higurashi, who continued their simple and unchanging chorus. Okay. So, I mean, that one, I don't know, I kind of already talked about what I think it meant. It was a discussion of Oryu, or specifically with Oryu, who is the leader of, the Onigafuchi Guardians. And she's basically just implying that if we can just get this project to stop, it's not going to start again, right? Or at least not anytime soon, without a great deal of effort, right? So, I mean, that kind of belief, it makes sense, right? First of all, it's, relatively desperate, right? Well, I don't know that I would call it desperate, right? But what they do to get that suspension is desperate, right? The kidnapping for one, right? And then eventually the dam dismemberment, right? We know these incidents happen, or have happened even, and that they're just they're meant to and now we have that perspective that it's just meant to get them to stop temporarily, right? Because of the danger that is posed by this, right? Or the perceived danger, at least, right? To the kid, there's real danger, but if they can get it to stop even for a bit, it's probably going to stop for good, which explains why they're willing to go so far, right? It makes sense. It just makes sense. All right, so now that we've gone through all these tips, I guess let's talk a bit about the episode as a whole. This was a good episode. It was kind of, in theory, slow, but I enjoyed it. That intrigue of just seeing Hinamizawa, right? Watching Akasaka see it as an outsider, what it was like, and then really, it was kind of uneventful all the way up until we got to Furude Shrine, and he was talking to Rika up on that balcony, right? There were some, or not balcony, that ledge area. Right, but I think before that there were still some notable moments, and one of them was definitely just seeing Rika again, that was cool. The Tomatake Mark II line is a little weird. I might have to check at some point the text and see if Tomatake ever makes mention of when exactly he started going around Hinamizawa. That's something I would be interested in for sure. It became pretty clear that he kind of was getting caught in his lies, specifically with the fact that he's leaving his wife at the hospital right now. and just visiting, and then being like, oh, we pre-planned this trip, and then he's like, oh, so then why didn't you like sign up for the trip ages ago, right? So I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that even like what Maki know, the executives know, and so I'm sure that means Ichiro is going to hear of this, right? And the other executives will know about Akasaka, presumably not just being here for pleasure, right? He's here for business. So that, I mean, that's all really important to note. But really, like I said, it's just that scene right at the ledge, right, where they're overlooking it, and then suddenly he gets a warning, like, you need to leave, right? I'm not saying this because I hate you, right? Like, basically then implies if I hated you, why would I tell you, right? Like, I would just let you die. I wouldn't care, right? So I'm not saying this because I hate you, but you have to leave. And then when he starts to be like, why? It's compared to, like, a child and their parent, and the parent pulling a child in from like a road, right? They try to walk onto the road, and they pull them back, and they don't explain why, they just do it, right? So it's like, she clearly is just not going to explain this to him, right? And obviously that whole scene is just, I mean, it's really creepy. Every time we see the sudden demeanor shift, right? Although, I mean, at this point, you got to come to expect it, right? At any given moment, you got to be ready for someone to have the creepy eyes and not be acting like themselves. But even just beyond that, really, I don't know. Another big thing is Rika, like, doesn't seem to remember it, right? And on one hand, you could be like, oh, but Rika's a fantastic manipulator, and I'm like, that's true. But do we have reason to believe that little kid Rika is a fantastic manipulator? Like, it felt like she was showing a lot of things on her face, right, that whole time, right? Like, her visible confusion, like, what are you talking about? I didn't say that, any of that, right? I didn't tell you to go back to Tokyo, right? But even before that, when he was asking, like, why are you so sure, right? She can't come up with an answer and is slowly trying to come up with one, and kind of it just ends up being like, because it's already determined, and just has to repeat that when he asks again, right? But it seems like according to Akasaka, on her face, he could tell that she knew the answer, but knew she couldn't tell him, right? And so it seems like she's not as good at hiding things, right, as maybe the Rika that we know, right? And so I'm like, maybe we do have real reason to believe she's not lying. She doesn't remember saying that, right? And I don't know, like I said, it kind of like a possession-esque theory, like, or something adjacent to that. I mean, it starts to make that it feels more possible than it had before. Fascinating stuff. So definitely broaden my perspective on what could be going on here by a bit. So overall, the last 15-20 minutes of that episode were like fantastic. And that second tip was pretty good. I don't fully get it now, but I have a feeling that this is going to play into, like, I don't know that I want to just say the villain, right? But, like, I feel like the narrator is probably the same as, like, tip 3 from chapter 1, and I'm sure we're going to see that character at some point, whoever that is. It very probably is someone we already know, right? We'll see who that is, or, like, what that is, and we're kind of getting some ideas of how they think, who they are. And so that's interesting. A lot of interesting things in this episode. I'm glad to have been back. We're going to be recording again here soon, because like I said, I'm wanting to get Chapter 4 done before I leave. I've got about a week. So pretty... I mean, it's going to be a little tight. I've heard this chapter's a little shorter. I think it should be fine. But, we might have to end up going to, like, 2 videos a day. Especially given that this was, like, a half episode. I mean, it ended up being nearly 2 hours, in all fairness. So, but given that this, like I said, was kind of closer to a half episode, I might have to start recording 2 times a day. But I can tell you the next video will definitely be out. I don't have a schedule planned right now. But there will be some kind of schedule. I'll maybe drop it in the comments of this video. Because by the time you guys see this, I'll probably have a few more recorded, to be honest. But that is all for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys are looking forward to the rest of Chapter 4. I know I am. I'm looking forward to getting through Chapter 4, spending all of my time while I'm with family. Well, not the time with my family, right? But like the down times when, you know, the siblings are at school, the parents are at work, right? Just kind of thinking about this game, right? And trying to draw some conclusions, and then coming back, getting ready for Chapter 5, and, you know, coming up with my predictions, right? It already seems like I feel like this route is going to give us a lot of information. There's going to be a lot to stew on, and I'm really excited for this. So, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys are looking forward to more. I'm sure there's plenty of crazy stuff to come in this chapter. And whenever we get there, I hope to see you guys there. Peace.